The Mockery Council, the assembly hall stretched before Ambassador Sarah Chen like a cathedral of stars. Crystalline walls reached toward a ceiling that seemed to hold the cosmos itself, while beings from across the galaxy filled the vast chamber. Some floated in energy fields, others stood on limbs that defied human understanding, and a few existed as pure consciousness wrapped in mechanical shells. Sarah stood alone at the center of it all, her simple black diplomatic suit making her appear impossibly small among the alien grandeur. She had prepared for this moment her entire life, studying xenobiology, mastering 17 different communication protocols, and learning the complex politics of galactic civilization. Earth's future hung on her words. High Regent Korth dominated the assembly from his elevated throne, his 6 arms gesturing with theatrical precision. His species, the Veltar, had ruled the galactic core for over 10,000 years. Their technology was so advanced that they could reshape matter at the molecular level with mere thought. To them, humanity was barely more than bacteria that had learned to build crude spacecraft. So, Korth's voice resonated through the chamber's translation matrix. The primitives from Sol 3 believe they deserve a seat among civilized species. His words triggered a wave of sounds that the universal translator struggled to interpret. Some were clicks, others were harmonic vibrations. But Sarah recognized them all as laughter. She remained perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her. Back. The United Earth Coalition formally requests membership in the Galactic Assembly. We offer our unique perspectives, our determination, and our commitment to peaceful cooperation. A creature that resembled a floating jellyfish made of liquid, metal pulsed with amusement. Unique perspectives. Your species has existed for what, 200,000 years? My people have been spacefaring for 50 million years. What could you possibly teach us? Sarah met its gaze steadily. We could teach you about adaptation, about surviving against impossible odds, about unity in diversity. The laughter grew. Louder. Admiral Zexai of the Dominion fleet leaned forward on his serpentine body. His scales shifted color as he spoke, each hue conveying additional meaning that Sarah's translator could only approximate. Unity. Your species has been at war with itself for millennia. We have watched you develop nuclear weapons and immediately use them against your own kind. You celebrate warriors who killed other humans. We have also celebrated peacemakers. Sarah replied calmly, We have learned from our mistakes. We have grown. Korth's laughter was like grinding stone. Your most advanced warship carries weapons that could not penetrate the hull of our civilian transport vessels. Your fastest ships take months to travel distances. We cover in hours. Your entire planetary defense grid could not stop a single one of our reconnaissance drones. The truth stung because it was accurate. Earth's military consisted of barely 300 ships, cobbled together from salvaged alien technology and human ingenuity. Their weapons were primitive fusion torpedoes and kinetic projectiles. Their shields were powered by reactors that the aliens considered barely functional. Dr. Yathara, a being composed entirely of crystallized thought, added her voice to the chorus of dismissal. Your computational capacity is so limited that you still use digital systems instead of quantum consciousness networks. Your artificial intelligence is less sophisticated than our children's toys. Sarah felt the weight of every word, but she had not come here to be intimidated. She had come here because Earth needed allies, and the galaxy needed to understand what humanity could become. Technology is not the only measure of a civilization's worth. No, Korth, gestured to the assembled aliens. Then what is your art? We have beings who can paint with the light of stars. Your music, we have species who compose symphonies using the gravitational waves of black holes. Your philosophy, we have minds that have contemplated existence for longer than your sun has burned. The chamber fell silent, except for the barely audible hum of the translation matrix. Sarah knew this was her moment, perhaps her only chance, to make them understand. You measure worth by what you can create or destroy. We measure it by what we can preserve and protect. Preserve and protect. Admiral Zexai's scales rippled with what Sarah interpreted as contempt. You have made half your planet uninhabitable through pollution and war. You have driven countless species to extinction. You have poisoned your own atmosphere and irradiated your own soil. And we have also healed wounds that should have been fatal, Sarah countered. We have brought back species from the brink of extinction. We have learned to transform deserts into gardens and to clean poisoned waters. We have discovered that our greatest strength is not our technology, but our ability to unite when facing impossible challenges. The laughter started again, but this time it carried an edge of cruelty. A being that looked like a walking mountain of living stone spoke in a voice like an avalanche. Unite. Your species cannot even agree on basic principles. You worship different gods, speak different languages, and fight over resources that are abundant throughout the galaxy. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We have learned to turn our differences into strengths. Our diversity makes us adaptable. Our conflicts have taught us the value of peace. Our struggles have shown us the power of cooperation. Cooperation, Korth stood from his throne, his 6 arms spreading wide. You want to know what cooperation looks like? The Veltar Empire spans 12 galaxies. We have unified species that evolved in dimensions you cannot even perceive. We have created peace through strength, order through superior technology, and prosperity through efficient resource management. And yet, Sarah said quietly, you have never faced extinction. The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was the silence of predators who had suddenly realized they were being challenged by prey. Extinction. Dr. Yethera's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. What relevance does that have to your application for membership? Sarah smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she looked dangerous. Every species in this room has achieved greatness through abundance. You have had access to unlimited resources, peaceful expansion, and technological advancement without existential threat. You have never had to choose between survival and principles. And you have. Korth's voice carried a new note of interest. We have faced extinction dozens of times. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and, yes, our own weapons. Each time, we have survived not through superior technology, but through the determination to protect what matters most. Admiral Zexai's scales shifted to a pattern Sarah had never seen before. Your point being, my point is that you have never been tested. You have never had to make the choice between individual survival and species survival. You have never had to sacrifice everything for the slim hope that those who come after you might have a better chance. Sarah reached into her diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small device. Several of the aliens tensed, their security systems activating, but she simply placed it on the floor between them. This contains the complete genetic code of every species. On Earth, not just the ones that survived, but the ones we lost. Every extinct bird, every vanished mammal, every plant that we failed to save. We carry our failures with us, so that we never forget the cost of our choices. Sentiment, Korth. Dismissed. What does this have to do with your application? Everything, Sarah replied. Because when you finally face a threat that your technology cannot solve, when you encounter something that your superior firepower cannot destroy, when you meet an enemy that your advanced civilization cannot understand, you will need allies who know how to fight impossible battles. The laughter stopped completely. The chamber was now filled with the kind of silence that preceded storms. Are you threatening us? Admiral Zexhi's voice was deadly quiet. No, Sarah said. I am warning you. The galaxy is vast, and you are not the only ones who have learned to travel between stars. Someday, you will meet something that makes your empires look small. When that day comes, you will need partners who have learned to survive through cooperation, adaptation, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. High Regent Korth's 6 arms moved in a complex pattern that Sarah recognized as a formal dismissal. Your application is denied. Earth will remain under galactic observation, but will not be granted membership rights. You may return to your primitive world and inform your leaders that the galaxy has no need for their unique perspectives. Sarah picked up her device and tucked it back into her pouch. I expected as much, but I want you to remember this moment. Remember that we offered partnership and you chose mockery. Remember that we extended our hand and you chose to laugh. She turned to leave, but Korth's voice stopped her. What exactly are you implying, human? Sarah looked back over her shoulder. I am implying that you have made assumptions about humanity based on what you can see. You have judged us by our technology, our ships, our weapons. You have never asked the one question that matters, which is, what are we capable of when we decide to stop holding back? The chamber erupted in laughter again, but this time it sounded forced, almost desperate. Sarah walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Just before she reached the doorway, she spoke one last time. You have 37,000 inhabited worlds. We have 1. You have fleets that number in the millions. We have 300 ships. You have ruled the galaxy for millennia. We have been spacefaring for less than a century. She paused. The question you should be asking is not what we can do with what we have, but what we can do with what we do, not have. The doors sealed behind her, cutting off the sound of alien laughter. Sarah walked down the corridor toward her shuttle, her expression calm but her mind racing. She touched the communication device behind her ear and spoke a single word: initiate. Across the galaxy, in settlements and stations and ships, humans began to disappear. Not violently, not dramatically, but systematically and completely. They finished their shifts, said goodbye to alien co-workers, and simply failed to report for duty the next day. Human traders completed their final deliveries and never returned to port. Human scientists submitted their last research reports and vanished from their laboratories. Within 72 hours, every human presence in galactic space had vanished without a trace. Earth itself went silent, its communication arrays inactive, its defense platforms powered down. The entire species had simply disappeared, leaving behind only empty settlements and unanswered questions. The aliens who had laughed at humanity's weakness suddenly found themselves wondering about something far more disturbing: humanity's true strength. The awakening giant commander, Zolthek, drifted through the void in his patrol ship. 6 months after the human disappearance, his species, the Kethma, had evolved in the cold depths of space, and he felt more at home in the darkness between stars than on any planet. His orders were simple: investigate the gravitational anomalies that had been detected in the outer rim territories. What he found defied every law of physics he understood. The sensor readings showed mass concentrations that should have been impossible. Objects the size of small moons moving through space with no visible propulsion systems. Energy signatures that registered off the scale of his instruments. And most disturbing of all, perfect geometric patterns that could only be artificial. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, running the scans for the 5th time. The results were identical. Massive structures existed in the void where his charts showed only empty space. But his visual sensors detected nothing except the distant glow of stars. Zoltek activated his long-range communications array. Patrol Command. This is Unit 779. I am detecting significant anomalies in Sector Designation Null 47. Requesting permission to investigate. The response came back immediately. Unit 779. You are ordered to maintain standard patrol route. Ignore sensor ghosts and continue mission parameters. Sensor ghosts. Zoltek stared at his instruments. These readings were too consistent, too structured to be equipment malfunctions. Something was out there, something massive and hidden. He made a decision that would change everything. Patrol Command, I am experiencing communication difficulties. Will attempt to restore contact after completing sensor sweep. He cut the transmission and turned his ship toward the anomalous readings. As he approached, the readings grew stronger, more defined. Whatever was out there, it was not hiding anymore. The first structure materialized around him like a mountain rising from the ocean. One moment he was flying through empty space. The next he was dwarfed by a construction so vast that his mind struggled to process its scale. The whole stretched in all directions, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. It was not a ship in any traditional sense. It was a city, a world, a manifestation of engineering prowess that made his own civilization's greatest achievements look like children's toys. Impossible, Zoltek whispered. This is impossible. More structures began to appear, each one larger than the last. They moved with purpose, adjusting their positions in formations that suggested coordination on a scale he had never imagined. These were not ships, they were mobile habitats, each one capable of supporting millions of inhabitants. A communication beam locked onto his vessel, and a voice spoke in perfect Kethma. Commander Zoltek, you are requested to dock at Bay 94. Your arrival is expected. Expected. How could they know his name? How could they speak his language? Zoltek's training told him to flee, to report this discovery to his superiors. But his curiosity overrode his caution. He followed the guidance signals to a docking bay that opened in the side of the nearest structure. The bay was large enough to hold his entire patrol fleet, but it was occupied by only a handful of small vessels. As he landed, Zoltek noticed that the gravity felt exactly like his homeworld, and the atmosphere readings showed a perfect match for his biological needs. A figure approached his ship as he disembarked. She was human, but not like any human he had encountered before. Her clothing was simple, but made from materials that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Her eyes held the kind of knowledge that came from seeing the universe from perspectives that others could not imagine. "Welcome aboard the New Horizon," she said in his language. "I am Admiral Marcus Webb, commander of the Terran Deep Space Fleet. We have been expecting you." Zoltek's translator struggled with the concepts. Terran, but humans are primitive. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Admiral Webb smiled. Your mistake is thinking that technology is the only measure of advancement. Would you like to see what we have accomplished while the galaxy was laughing at our primitive ships? She led him through corridors that seemed to extend forever, past laboratories where humans worked with equipment that defied his understanding of physics. They passed observation decks that showed the construction of even larger structures, projects that spanned light years and involved the manipulation of matter and energy on scales that his civilization had never imagined. How? Zoltek asked. How is any of this possible? The same way everything else is possible, Admiral Webb replied. Through determination, cooperation, and the refusal to accept limitations as permanent. They entered a command center that monitored thousands of similar structures throughout the galaxy. Each one was positioned in the void between star systems, hidden from detection by technologies that made stealth fields obsolete. The scope of the operation was staggering. Humanity had not disappeared. They had relocated to a parallel infrastructure that existed in the spaces between civilizations. We spent 3 years preparing for this moment, Admiral Webb explained. 3 years moving our people, our resources, our entire civilization to places where you would never think to look. We studied your technologies, your capabilities, your blind spots. We learned to build not just ships, but mobile worlds that could sustain our species indefinitely. But why? Zoltek asked. Why this massive undertaking? Because you taught us that the galaxy judges strength by visible power. You showed us that cooperation requires demonstration of capability. You proved that respect must be earned through displays of force. They reached the center of the command deck, where a holographic display showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of human constructs, each one larger than the greatest achievements of galactic civilization. There were thousands of them, spread throughout known space and extending into regions that had never been explored. We are not hiding, Admiral Webb said. We are preparing. For 3 years, we have been building not just ships, but a civilization that can survive anything the galaxy might throw at us. We have learned to harvest energy from black holes, to convert matter directly into living space, to create technologies that work not through superior materials, but through superior understanding. A new voice entered the conversation. Commander Zoltek, I believe we have met before. Zoltek turned to see Ambassador Sarah Chen approaching. She wore the same simple clothing as the Admiral, but her presence filled the room with quiet authority. Ambassador Chen, Zoltek said carefully, I was present during your appearance before the assembly. You were ... dismissed. I was, Sarah agreed, but I was also heard. Every word I spoke, every warning I gave, every promise I made, all of it was recorded and transmitted. Back to Earth, the galaxy chose to laugh at our weakness instead of listening to our strength. And now, Sarah gestured to the displays around them. Now we are ready to have that conversation again. But this time, we will not be asking for permission. The command center's main display activated, showing the familiar crystal chamber of the Galactic Assembly. But instead of one human standing alone, thousands of massive structures materialized around the station. Each one was larger than the assembly itself, their hulls gleaming with technologies that made the alien station look primitive by comparison. High Regent Korth's 6 arms trembled as he stared at the displays. This is impossible. Humans are primitive. Your technology is inferior. Your ships are crude constructions of metal and fusion reactors. Sarah's voice came from every communication system in the station simultaneously. You are correct, High Regent. Our old ships were crude. Our old technology was primitive. Our old civilization was limited by the resources of a single world. The view changed to show the interior of one of the human structures. It was not a ship in any traditional sense, it was a garden world, complete with forests, lakes, and cities that floated in perfect harmony. Millions of humans worked and lived in spaces that defied conventional physics. This is what humans accomplish when we stop pretending that your limitations apply to us, Sarah continued. We have built not just ships, but worlds that can travel between stars. We have created not just weapons, but technologies that can reshape reality according to our needs. Admiral X's scales had shifted to colors that Zoltek had never seen before. How many of these ... structures ... do you have? Enough, Sarah replied. We have learned to think not in terms of planets or fleets, but in terms of civilizations. Each of our constructs can support more people than your greatest cities. Each of our manufacturing centers can produce more resources than your richest worlds. Dr. Ythra's crystalline form pulsed with what Zelthek recognized as fear. What do you want? The same thing we wanted 3 years ago, Sarah said. Partnership, cooperation, the opportunity to contribute to galactic civilization as equals rather than servants. And if we refuse, the massive structures around the assembly station began to move, their formations shifting into patterns that suggested both protection and threat. Then you will discover what happens when you underestimate a species that has learned to survive extinction. High Regent Korth's voice cracked as he spoke. You are demanding membership through force. No, Sarah replied. We are offering membership through mutual respect. The force is simply to ensure that you take the offer seriously. The assembly chamber fell silent as the alien leaders processed what they were seeing. The species they had dismissed as primitive had somehow constructed a civilization that dwarfed their own greatest achievements. The humans they had laughed at had become something that made their empires look fragile. How? Korth asked finally. How did you accomplish this? Sarah's image appeared in the chamber, but now she was not alone. Behind her stood representatives of humanity from every walk of life: scientists, engineers, artists, philosophers, and ordinary people who had contributed to the greatest construction project in galactic history. We did it the same way we have always done everything, Sarah said. Through cooperation, determination, and the willingness to sacrifice individual comfort for collective survival. We did it by refusing to accept your definition of what was possible. But the resources, Dr. Ythra protested. The energy requirements alone should have been impossible. Only if you think in terms of scarcity, Sarah replied. We learned to think in terms of abundance. Every star is a power source. Every asteroid is raw materials. Every empty space is a potential home. We did not build these constructs by taking from others. We built them by learning to create from what you considered worthless. Admiral X's scales were now shifting through patterns that Zoltek realized were questions. And what guarantee do we have that you will not use this power against us? The same guarantee you gave us when we asked for membership, Sarah replied. None. You will have to decide whether you trust us based on our actions, not our words. The silence stretched for long minutes as the alien leaders contemplated their options. Finally, High Regent Korth spoke. What are your terms? Equal membership in the Galactic Assembly, full access to trade routes and diplomatic channels, recognition of Earth's sovereignty over its chosen territories, and most importantly, an end to the assumption that newer civilizations are inferior. 2 older ones, And in return, Sarah smiled. In return, you get the partnership of a species that has learned to survive anything. You get allies who view challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles. You get friends who measure success not by what they can take, but by what they can build. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a species had earned membership not through conquest or advanced technology, but through the demonstration of potential that no one had imagined possible. As the ceremony concluded and the massive human constructs began to move toward their new positions as protectors of galactic civilization, Zoltek found himself alone with Admiral Webb. Was this always the plan? He asked. No, Admiral Webb replied. The plan was to earn respect through peaceful demonstration of our capabilities. But when that failed, we adapted. We learned that sometimes the only way to prove you are not weak is to show that you are strong. And now Admiral Webb looked out at the stars, where human constructs were taking their positions as guardians of a galaxy that had finally learned to respect the species from Earth. Now we do what we have always done. We build, we grow. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. And we prove that the best measure of a civilization is not what it can destroy, but what it can create. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The species that had laughed at humanity's weakness would never again make the mistake of underestimating human determination. In the void between stars, where impossibility met ingenuity, a new chapter in galactic history had begun. The laughter had indeed turned to silence. But in that silence, something far more beautiful had emerged, the sound of different species, working together to build something greater than any of them could achieve alone.